News where a partial verdict was just reached in Harvey Weinstein's rape retrial. Arthur Cheen is live in Lower Manhattan with more details on this. Arthur.
Bianca, what we can tell you is Harvey Weinstein will be found guilty on one of the three charges that he faces in the retrial of his sex crimes accusation. He'll be found guilty on count one. Now, the reason why we know this, and this is unusual because the jury isn't done yet, is because a juror today issued a note to the judge saying he needed to talk to the judge about a problem that was going on in the jury room. That set off a massive argument in court where even Harvey Weinstein himself spoke to the judge and addressed the court, seemingly to try to intimidate the judge into granting a mistrial, which would benefit him. Well, the judge said, look, you're saying there's a big problem in that jury room right now, so I'm going to ask the jurors if there's an agreement on any of the three charges that Weinstein faces. He says if there's an agreement on one of the other charges, it means they are working together and they are doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is going through a very difficult jury deliberation process. Well, he called the jurors back in and said, I know you're having difficulty with the rape charge, which is count two. Is there an agreement on one of the other charges? All the jurors immediately nodded, and then he said, is it unanimous? And the jurors, a couple of them blurted out, said, yes, it's unanimous. So he sent them back out, said to Arthur Aidala, who is Weinstein's defense attorney, and to Weinstein, the jury is doing its job. I'm going to give them the rest of the day off because it's obviously difficult, but I'm going to have them come in and poll them. So this is how it polls on the three counts. On count one, Harvey Weinstein, the jury says, is guilty. On count two, they say they have not reached a verdict yet. And on count three, the forced oral sex, they have reached a verdict of not guilty. Each of the individual jurors was then polled by the court. All of them confirmed that that's where they're at. So just now, the judge ordered everybody to get some air, cool off today, and to be back in court by 10 a.m. tomorrow morning to return to their deliberations. But again, Harvey Weinstein will be found guilty in at least one count in connection with the retrial case here at the criminal courthouse. Bianca?
All right, Arthur, appreciate it. Thanks so much. And joining us now with more insight in today's verdict is Rich Schoenstein, an attorney and managing editor of the Hofstra Law Review. Rich, thanks so much for joining us.
Good to be here.
All right, let's get right to it. Weinstein is found guilty on one count, then you have the no verdict on another, and then acquitted on the third. So what does that split decision really say about the jury's view of this evidence?
So this case is three different counts for three different women, three different alleged victims. And it was entirely possible that the jury might conclude one thing about one of the alleged victims, something different about the second, and something different about the third. It's not a case where they've decided guilty to a lower charge or a lesser offense. They've simply decided guilty on one of the three stories, not guilty on a second story, and the third one still being considered.
Interesting. Now, moving forward, could prosecutors retry that undecided decision, and would that be a risky or a smart move?
Well, we're not to that yet. First of all, the judge would have to declare a hung jury and a mistrial, and that's not what the judge is doing. The judge is having the jury come back tomorrow for further deliberations on that second count. So they have a guilty verdict on the first count, a not guilty verdict on the third count, which can't be retried once you get a verdict of not guilty, but no verdict yet. If that ends in a hung jury, then in theory it could be retried by the prosecutors.
Sure. Rich, what do you make of the behind-the-scenes courtroom drama that we have seen unfold before this partial verdict came down?
I think it's troubling. I think what we've heard from this jury in terms of acrimony, in terms of divisiveness, and people trying to exert their influence in the jury room, I think it's fodder for appeal, to be quite candid about it. I think whatever verdict comes against Harvey Weinstein in this case, there's going to be a live appeal based just on what has happened in these deliberations. It's surprising to me that it's taken so long. And I've heard a lot of stuff that I don't really like in terms of how the jury deliberations have gone.
Sure. How does today's outcome, I guess, affect Harvey Weinstein's overall legal future moving forward?
Well, it's a bad outcome for him. Any guilty verdict in the state of New York subjects him to a sentence and imprisonment here. I know he has that California conviction already, and he's serving time on that, although he has an appeal pending in California. if he gets another guilty verdict in New York, the chance of him spending the rest of his life in prison, unfortunately, increases substantially.
Interesting. I guess in terms of leaving it here, talking about the Me Too movement as he was a fixture of, what does this partial verdict do to solidify the broader message of accountability moving forward in this Me Too movement?
Well, I think that it's a continuation of accountability. It would have been perhaps perceived as a setback if he was acquitted 5 years after having been convicted at what we all think was the start of the Me Too movement. So it won't be a setback if he's convicted of at least some of these crimes. But I remind everybody, Sean Combs is on trial down the street also for crimes, at bottom, crimes against women. So the idea, this accountability, this is still alive and well in this country. There has not been a death to the Me Too movement yet.
Sure, the spotlight on both of those high-profile cases. Rich, we certainly appreciate you joining us and breaking this down for us. Thank you again.
Great to be here.